Good morning. Welcome to the Stylo News Intelligence Update Explainer. I'm your anchor, bringing you an impartial early morning briefing on the Africa Situation Report for the 23rd of July, 2026. Today, we're going to systematically review the primary patterns of events, regional flashpoints, and strategic impacts unfolding across the continent. Before we dive in, today's briefing is brought to you by ProWave AI. They're the developers behind Stylo Intel apps and the commercial AI-powered open-source intelligence platform Stylo News. Here is our agenda for this morning. We'll be moving through the situation reports for West, North, and Central Africa, followed by a look at the current information landscape, and wrapping up with our near-term forecast. Section 1. West Africa Situation Report focusing on Sahel pressures and institutional strain. Looking at the security environment across this desk, intelligence reporting reveals a severely fragmented landscape. What we're seeing are expanding insurgencies, continuously pressing against already strained state institutions. There's intense kinetic activity radiating from Mali, straight down through the Niger border, and deep into Nigeria's Borno, Plateau, and Benue states. This really illustrates the sheer scale of the theater we're dealing with today. These aren't just isolated pockets of violence, it's a contiguous zone of structural vulnerability. Breaking down the specific actors driving this instability, analysts assess that JNM remains the dominant al-Qaeda-aligned force, showing distinct offensive momentum over in Mali. Recent reporting points to heavy combat and a loss of government control in Kidal, which strongly suggests JNIM is actively pursuing a supranational Islamic polity. Meanwhile, ISWAP remains a highly capable, adaptive presence in northeastern Nigeria. Further west and central, you have Ansaru, who continue to heavily stress Nigerian security forces through kidnappings and insurgent support operations. When we contrast national stability in the region, we see very distinct approaches by regional decision-makers. In Niger, the ruling military junta is facing deep structural exposure to cross-border militant transit. On the other hand, Nigeria, operating under its civilian administration, retains stronger state institutions and greater economic resilience. However, they are dealing with simultaneous burdens, from jihadism in the northeast to communal violence in the Central Belt. Consequently, Nigerian forces are severely overstretched, and analysts assess the administration in Abuja currently lacks the spare capacity to lead a broader regional security response. Moving on to Section 2, North Africa Situation Report covering border vulnerabilities and transit zones. Right now, this region manages to avoid a single dominant crisis, but there's a mounting, undeniable pressure creeping up from its southern borders. The primary concern centers firmly on Libya. The southern portion of the country, particularly around Ceuta and the broader Faison region, acts largely as a permissive transit and logistics corridor. It simply isn't a consistently governed counterterrorism space, which leaves an open door for transnational facilitation. We're seeing the tactical effects of that ungoverned space right now. Recent clashes in the southwest involved Libyan National Army elements being targeted by the Operations Room for the Liberation of the South. This situation points toward potential LNA border crackdowns, which could inevitably displace militants further into adjacent desert corridors. At the same time, heavy combat involving JNIM in northern Mali is placing direct pressure on the Sahel-Maghreb approaches. Intelligence sources are flagging a trans-regional alignment spanning Libya and the Sahel. The bottom line here is that hostile armed networks are retaining significant freedom of movement. Next, Section 3, Central Africa Situation Report, focusing on the Eastern DRC conflict system. When assessing the broader Central and East Africa landscape, analysts maintain high confidence that the regional center of gravity remains firmly rooted in the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo. We are observing a severe convergence of proxy dynamics, rebel expansion, and disease-driven governance failure along the borders of the DRC, Rwanda, and Burundi. This is a complex, multi-domain instability environment that is highly vulnerable to rapid escalation. Reviewing the key actors, M23 stands out as the dominant operational threat, actively exploiting governance gaps for parallel rule in the eastern DRC. Looking slightly north to the Central African Republic, the newly formed ASP coalition has emerged as a fresh insurgent threat near Amda Fak, which has prompted Bangui to form a new National Defense Board. Then you have Uganda, which presents a notable contrast. The state firmly maintains immediate coercive control, but analysts are keeping a close watch on rising succession uncertainty and elite friction tied to President Museveni's health, which could trigger some abrupt security sector repositioning. So, what does this mean for U.S. forces and diplomatic personnel in these regions? Intelligence indicates there is no specific, credible reporting of imminent, deliberate attack plots targeting U.S. facilities. The threat is assessed as elevated, yes, but it's situational and indirect. the primary risks actually stem from proximity to active combat, things like ambush, indirect fire, and opportunistic violence. There is a particularly high risk regarding personnel movement outside hardened facilities in the eastern DRC and the Central African Republic. Turning now to Section 4, Information and Sentiment Landscape, taking a look at open-source intelligence. It's vital to analyze the public media narratives shaping regional perspectives. A neutral, systematic review of international outlets, from Reuters to Al Jazeera, along with key intelligence monitoring handles, reveals a broad consensus. Observers across the political spectrum are noting a profound sense of governance fatigue. There is widespread concern over junta entrenchment in the Sahel, alongside shared alarm regarding the adaptive nature of insurgent projects like JNIM. The overall sentiment clearly points toward a weakening of democratic and institutional resilience across multiple regions. Finally, Section 5, Forecast and Next Steps, where we'll look at near-term indicators. To conclude today's briefing, we want to outline the most likely events analysts advise monitoring over the coming weeks. The trajectory over the next 7 to 30 days points heavily away from conventional interstate war. Instead, the most dangerous short-term pathways involve localized hybrid conflict. In the next 7 days, anticipate continued proxy escalation in eastern DRC. Looking 14 days out, monitor the Central African Republic for potential follow-on attacks by the ASP coalition and reactive state force redeployments. And over a 30-day horizon, the primary strategic indicator will be JNIM's ongoing expansion pressure radiating from Mali southward toward West African coastal state borders. Thank you for joining us for this explainer. To stay ahead of these rapidly evolving events, we urge you to listen to the full Stylo News Intel Update morning podcast on your favorite channel or just follow the link in this post. You can subscribe to get AI-powered news on demand at stylonews.com. We'll leave you with this thought to consider. As these insurgencies continually adapt to state weaknesses, which fragile border will be the first to permanently break? Stay informed and have a good morning.